Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar about how to win on the digital shelf in 2023. There's been an awful lot written and spoken about the trend and movement of paid media ad spend towards retail media networks, with an estimated £140 billion being spent globally in 2023. Today we have three speakers who will be able to cut through all the hype and show us practical examples of how FMCG brands should approach this opportunity. We have Vince Amato, Retail Sales Manager at Criteo, Tony Thomas, Head of Digital Shelf at Threepipe, and we're delighted to have Ramin Aini, Head of E-commerce at global food manufacturer McCormick. Vince and Tony will be talking through a couple of presentations before I dive into a Q&A with Ramin. But first, I'm going to hand over to Tony to take us through his presentation.
Thank you, Jim, for that. Thank you all for joining us. To tell you a little bit about us, we are Threepipe Reply. We are part of the Reply network in the UK. We are 18 years old, but as being part of the Reply network, we have access to around 42 offices around the world. Threepipe Reply on its own is around 90 people, and we have won enough industry awards that sort of prove that we know what we're talking about from our early days. Being part of the Reply network also gives us access to quite a lot of talent and languages around the world, which we utilize for most of our clients. As you can see, our coverage is global as well. Coming to the topic at hand today, we start out by looking at the evolution of marketplaces. If you look at the left-hand side, we have the pure play marketplaces, the original ones, Amazon, eBay. From there, we have what we would call the new marketplaces, Sainsbury's, Surplus, Currys, Boots, to name a few. And why has this made a difference? So to learn what we were going to talk about in the future, we should look at the past in the first instance to start off. 2022 was when everybody really started noticing retail media networks and in this digital shelf space. So we had people like the Boston Consulting Group saying that this is a new 100 billion media opportunity for retailers. Merkel saying that the ad spend is going to move over, 85% of the CPGs would be jumping onto the platform. Plus, there was a little bit here about the future. Currently, we have what is called endemic brands advertising on the retail media networks. But the big opportunity was for non-endemic brands. So for example, you can have a Colgate that is listed in a Tesco to advertise on the Tesco network. But in the future, it is possible that a Nike might advertise on the Tesco network. So that is the opportunity there for non-endemic brands, and then that leading directly to non-endemic ad revenue. So that was all about 2022. Vince, who is on this webinar with me, will show you a little bit about the endemic and non-endemic stuff coming up the Criteo pipeline as well. So moving into 2023, what has actually changed? This is a snapshot from the FT, which called retail media networks the third wave of digital. So if you can think about search, i.e. Google, Bing, as the first wave, we have social, which is the second wave, i.e. Meta, Snap, and TikTok. Online retail media, Amazon, and the marketplaces are seen as the third wave of digital. And the reason it's called the third wave, and if you look at the amount of money that's being put towards it, you can see why digital advertising is big and it is starting to get segmented and fragmented. And the third wave is the big opportunity coming in. And the reason for this is that there is a fundamental shift happening. Historically, if a brand wanted to reach a customer, it had to go via a publisher where they would buy a certain number of impressions on a CPM model and hope that the consumer would actually notice the brand and maybe buy from there. There was no guaranteed outcome, there was no guaranteed purchase, but there was the hope of the brand that the customer would see the brand and engage and maybe transact. Now what is happening is that that publisher, even though still present in the site, the brand has direct access to the consumer, which means that it's a one-to-one relationship. There is the attribution there, and they can make sure that whatever they show is in the place where a consumer is actually looking for it. So that is quite a big shift that has happened, which has been made possible by the retail media networks. Of course, the opportunity where we look at it is this. A is the first party data that the brands are getting. B is the fact that the retailers now realize they have something that they can monetize. The traffic that's coming to their site can be monetized and provides value. And thirdly, the margins. The margins are incredibly high. As you can see from the Forrester report, the margins are around 70 to 80%. So nobody's going to say no to that sort of numbers, which when we look at it from a brand's point of view, they have now become a lot more holistic. Unilever now does not. Earlier, sales used to be a slightly iffy word, not anymore. Marketing is now being dropped and takes on the sales roles as well from Unilever. PepsiCo, again, the same thing, bringing retail media into the organization. So brands are adapting at quite a fast rate to keep up with the pace of change in the market. Now, talking a bit more about why it does matter. As I said before, this is a win-win-win situation for everybody. If we look at the potential size of the market, 2 slides ago, it was 100 billion. 2 slides later in 2023, it is predicted to be 1.3 trillion. And everybody wins in this. The brand wins because it gets a chance to promote its brand products or services to customers. The ad agency wins because it has to come up with the creative, support the brand, and the like. The ad tech people win because they have to optimize the buying and selling process. The publishers win. And lastly, the retailers win because they get the extra ad dollars as well as the value capture and the first party data, which also loops back to the brands. Now, how do we make it work? As with all these things, it always starts with the algorithm. Every supermarket in the country, around the world, runs on an algorithm. And these algorithms essentially have 7 to 8 levers in play. And out of the 7 to 8 levers, each supermarket gives a different priority level to the algorithm. So what works on one supermarket or retailer will not work on the other. So looking at these levers in a bit more detail, ignoring the performance audit and the monitoring tools, which are tools that we use, we look at things like product availability, out of stock, what happens to you, pricing, profitability, and pricing strategies. Are you competitive in the market? Do you have any offers on? Then we look at the retail media providers like the Citrus and the Criteos of the world. Then we look at, is your advertising and promotion aligned to what is being shown on the website? So are you on promo when the ad is on, or is it for NPD and the like? Looking at category placement, are you in the right place? Can you be in both, for example, Mexican foods as a recipe sachet and on world foods? That is like getting stocked in 2 aisles on a physical supermarket. Then we look at copy and title optimization. Have these been done in order that customers can actually find you? Does it help with your rankings? We then look at the images and the assets and do a gap analysis. Here, again, if you were in a physical shop, you would lift a pack, you would look at the front, you would look at the back, you might see, has it got MSG? How much time would it take to prepare the dish? Now, online, consumers are expecting a replication of the offline shopping experience online. So we need to have those images that tell the story and give them the best experience possible. Lastly, it's the ratings and reviews program. Offline, somebody would have told you that this product is great and it adds a lot of flavor to what you are cooking. However, online, there is nobody to tell you that, which is why the ratings and reviews come into play. So the reviews give you validation that you have a good product, and the ratings actually tell the algorithm amongst a sea of good products, which is the best product out there and why they should come up in the rankings when a consumer is searching for it. So in order to make the levers work, we have to check which of these levers can organically be adjusted by the brand and which of these levers needs a bit of paid support from the brand in order to make it work. So if we look at them one by one as we go along, So the levers on the retailer that we can control on an organic basis is obviously the category placement, the copy and title optimization, and the images and gap analysis. Looking at them in a little bit more detail. Titles, copy, and images. We have given this a priority level of around 7 out of 10. And the reason we say to the brands that they have to do this is because optimizing your titles and copy allows customers to find what they're looking for. The keywords within the title and the descriptions help with the rankings, because the algorithm knows that if somebody is looking for curry powder and you do not have curry powder in the title or in the description, the algorithm does not know which product to serve up in the search results. It also helps with when you have images to provide a better user experience as before, with ingredients, time taken to prepare, and also the images give you a chance to update your content in order to make it seasonally relevant. And last but not the least, titles, copy, and images optimization help with your rankings. And this is an example of a graph of a retailer where we can see that the organic rank is strongest when your product title is 46 characters or less. And the more characters you have, your title gets cut off. Imagine that a lot of people are doing their shopping online using their mobile while traveling around. And if you have a truncated title in there or a truncated description, people rarely click read more in order to identify what the product is and what they can do with it. So all that leads is the brand not getting enough visibility out there because of mistakes like this, where they write quite a lot of characters, so it gets truncated, or the keywords are not there within the title or the descriptions. So this is something that you can really easily keep an eye out and fix. Best practice, obviously be aware of the character limits by retailer for product titles. Optimize for mobile in order to avoid titles being cut off. As I said before, people are searching on their mobile. So if they can't read the whole title and they don't understand what it is within a very short period of time, they just move on to the next product. Writing for product, when you write product descriptions, write it both for the consumer as well as for the algorithm. Make sure there's enough keywords in there, but try not to stuff the keywords more than X number of times, because the algorithm picks that up and then pushes you down the rankings. And if you are constrained by budgets, always focus on the hero image and make sure that it is mobile optimized. So even if you have one image, but it's a really good image and it can be seen on mobile, you'd win out more than you lose. And also you have a chance to make seasonal recipes, seasonal content, where you can update them using images. And some of the supermarkets at the moment offer you a video slot. Usually the retailers in the UK have around 5 to 6 slots that you can use, and one of them tends to be video on the carousel. Again, something to be useful. Obviously, there are some limitations here, which tend to be that you have to go through Brand Bank in order to change anything from your title, copy, and images, and there are associated fees with it. And also the speed at which you can make the change within Brand Bank is also an issue. Moving on to the next lever that can be controlled by a brand, we want to talk about product availability. Product availability, or out of stock as it's known, is a priority level 10 out of 10. Because if you are not in the supermarket, you are never going to get bought and you're not going to be seen. Now, with regards to out of stocks, different supermarkets have a different weighting to how they treat you when you're out of stock. But generally, almost all of them penalize you if you're not in stock. So here is an example of a retailer and what happens to your rankings when you are out of stock. So most of the time, product does not rank when it goes out of stock. And usually, because the stock levels are controlled quite tightly, even if you're out of stock and about to go out of stock, your rankings start dropping, which means that the algorithm does know that the stock availability is quite low. And your rankings are also affected when the stock availability is inconsistent, because they're not going to let you rank for bolognese mix if they're never sure that you're going to be in stock or out. Also, what happens is if you're out of stock for an extended period of time, like a month or so, for sure you do not rank high, and your return to a high ranking is with a very slow pace, because the algorithm needs to make sure that you're going to be in stock before we get there. So what can you do in order to minimize this? Everybody will go out of stock. That's just something that happens in business. But what can you do in order to minimize the disruption from this? So you can focus your stock efforts on ensuring recurring out of stock issues are resolved quickly. So if it's sending stock to the DCs rather than to the stores directly, or utilizing dark stores and the like. Investigate possibility of bulk ordering, and this depends upon the relationship you have with the supermarket in order to make it happen. But lastly, something that you can control in order to minimize the out of stock issues is to utilize retail media, because sponsored search there is a straight out switch on, switch off. So the moment you come back in stock, if you have sponsored search on, you can get the first 2 slots in the rankings if they are sponsored search slots, which tend to be the case for most of the retailers. And we have seen that without the sponsored search in place, your rankings can drop and stay low for up to 2 weeks when you come back from out of stock. Talking about the next lever that a brand can control on a retailer organically is ratings and reviews. As we said before, reviews give validation for your product, that it's a good product, and ratings actually tell the algorithm why you should be shown. We have seen through our experience of working with multiple brands on multiple retailers that roughly 20 reviews and around 4.4 stars is what gets you on the radar of the algorithm in order to help with your rankings. 4.4 to 4.8 is what we see as the best range to be in. This also helps for you to rank for brand and sub-brand keywords, and they help you rank for that. So even if you're thinking of whitening toothpaste, you have a better chance of ranking for those sort of keywords by having a higher rated product. Here we can see on the graph what happens when your ratings drop and how you can maintain a high ranking by keeping it between 4.4 and 4.8. And of course, it matters because we see that 93% of consumers look to read a review before they purchase something. 3.3, this is an old stat, 3.3 is a minimum star rating of a business that consumers would even consider engaging with. And people are actually willing to pay more for the same product or service if they can see that other people have validated it. We do help by having a network of over 30,000 reviewers that we use. And what we do here is the reviewers actually shop at these relevant supermarkets. So it's not a sampling exercise where we send them products and then hope that it happens. Instead of that, what we actually do is make sure that the reviewer buys it as part of their regular shop and adds it to the basket, which means that they've actually paid for it and they test it out and write a review, be it good or bad. And these sort of unique reviews are a lot more powerful on the retailer platforms rather than syndicated ones. Moving on to the levers that can be controlled on a retailer from a paid perspective, you can always look at your pricing, profitability, and pricing strategies. You can be aligned with the advertising and promo offers that you have in place. But one of the things that the brand can control through agencies such as ourselves is the advertising management, the Criteo, the Citrus Ads of the world. So moving into that, as a definition, a retail media network is when retailers set up an advertising platform on their website, app, or other digital platforms within their network. This allows the store and other brands to advertise to customers on sites such as Tesco or Asda. So comparable to in-store advertising in a digital format, but with a lot of added benefits, such as attribution, time of day when you can show the ads, and the like. Looking at the players in the market, There are currently two leading players in the market, CitrusAd and Criteo, who's present with us today with Vince, representing them. And the point to remember here is that Criteo and CitrusAd are mutually exclusive. If you have one, you cannot have the other on the platform. And between the two of them, they are carving up the market. And here are some examples of the retailers that use the different systems. And today, since we are being supported by Criteo, we can see what Criteo is like across the market. So you have FMCG, which is Asda Morrison's, consumer electronics, Currys, Very Littlewoods, and the like. Health and beauty, which is covered by Look Fantastic and Boots. Q-commerce, Deliveroo, something new that Vince and team have brought on board. And they from Criteo, what you can actually have are both sponsored products as well as on-site display. Now, to tell us a lot more about what Criteo can offer to you and how we as an agency can help you on that, I pass over to Vince.
Hi there, thanks, Tony. So, as Tony had mentioned, we form part of Criteo, and we focus predominantly on the online retail media part of the ad tech that Tony was talking about. So how can we help you? So I said we focus on the online part. So it's important to understand that there is a difference between how support is in store versus online. And I think with regards to the physical retailer, you'll be familiar with how you win within this area, and that's predominantly via scale. So you can see from the diagram below that the share of shelf is usually correlated to the brand share. So as you can see on the strategy that's been taken here, there's a lot of brand blocking where brands are placed together in order to get that visibility on shelf. And with regards to how a shopper would see this in store, they would come up to the mod, and they have 120 potential SKUs that are visible to them, which means that there is opportunity within these brand blocks to be seen. So we can gauge from that that in-store shoppers can find you. However, online, it's a slightly different approach, and brands actually need to find the shoppers instead, which is where we come in. With the examples below, you can see that I've just taken one of the mods, which is roughly 40 products. And actually, when we look at this from a desktop and mobile point of view, this reduces heavily in terms of visibility to around 10% for desktop above the fold and 5% for mobile, which shows essentially 2 SKUs out of the 40. So the purpose of Criteo is to help you in your online space to utilize retail media to make your products more visible for in-market shoppers at the point of purchase where it matters. So you can see from these examples, we push the products being sponsored to the top where they're more visible, they interrupt the shopper journey, and they're more likely to convert. And in the UK, our core sales driving products are sponsored products, which some of you may have come across. And below, we have got some examples of where we operate these within the different categories that we partner with. So at FMCG, you can see an example there where we have our products at the top of the organic results. The health and beauty, same thing as well, appearing at the top of the search results. And for consumer electronics within Ingrid, where it matters as shoppers are looking at considering purchasing products. So over to Tony just to give an analysis of some results from real life activations that we've worked on together.
Thank you, Vince. So just to take you through 2 examples here. Here we have a store cupboard essentials brand and who we've worked with over the Christmas period in order to drive traffic and awareness. We can see here that from a spend of around 25,000, we have generated more than 78,000 of revenue, which works out to the fact that every pound that the client gave us, it's been returned more than £3 back. They've got more than £3 back. What we have done here is made sure that we switch on the campaign during the day when we know that the search intent is highest, and switch off towards the end of the day when we know that people over a Christmas period will be out or at a party or entertaining or having dinner. So there's no point showing our ads. So this is the clever management of switch on, switch off in order to be competitive during a very competitive time. Now, this is a low price product because it's something that people use for their everyday lives. So if you look at our second case study, we can see here that this is a campaign that we did on curries. During the last couple of months, especially in November, there was this huge amount of awareness around the cost of living, and everybody was looking to see which was the least or most economical device you could use. And one of the winners in that category was microwaves. So they did a test of checking out how much would it cost in terms of money to bake a potato using the different appliances, and the microwave came out as the winner. So our client had an idea, said, look, we want to push our full microwave range on curries. So we took up the challenge. And as you can see here, from a spend of £16,000, we made more than £67,000. It could have gone higher, but as Vince will testify, we sold out of every single microwave from that brand. So the return was £4.24 for every pound that this gave us, and we managed to sell out the whole range. We didn't have any more stock to sell. That's how far we got with it. Vince, back to you.
Yes, so you can see that sponsored products works really well for driving sales. But as you know, the world of commerce is evolving, and Criteo are ahead to help make sure that we can offer multiple ways to engage shoppers via retail media. So if you look on the left-hand side, sponsored products focuses on the lower part of the funnel with conversions and sales. Actually, we're developing our suite of products to also look at the whole marketing funnel and help brands essentially bring their products to life in a number of different ways to tackle various objectives. So if you look at the middle section, this will target the middle part of the funnel, looking at consideration. So we have a number of retail partners that we work with where on-site display is becoming a bigger part of their suite of placements that can be offered, an inventory that can be bought. And then we can also target brand awareness at the top end of the funnel via our off-site placement, which utilizes first-party data to target shoppers off-site and drive them back into the retailer. And to give you an idea how this works and how we unify the entire shopper journey, you can see on the number of examples that we have below that we connect essentially the brand placements to performance. So this is a way to bring those two different parts of marketing together. You can see on the left-hand side a Hendrix advert within Asda's platform, but then you can also move across to a hybrid in Showcase with brand and sales driving, and then a more MPU style IAB format on the right-hand side. Currently via Criteo, we can offer this via Asda, Deliveroo and Currys. However, as mentioned, in 2023, we are expanding our range of retailers that we work with. So Boots, Look Fantastic and Very will also have very similar propositions as well. And not forgetting Q-Commerce, which has grown over the years. Criteo has recently partnered up with Deliveroo, and within 2023, we will also be offering opportunities to reach these shoppers who have a slightly different shopper behavior in a number of different formats, as you can see below as well. So we have mass reach awareness inventory via homepage. We can target people via order tracker, which is a popular frequency driven part of the website. And then we can also look at their grocery side of the business with placements such as browse and search across their retail partners and more impulsive opportunities via the basket as well. So these will all be coming in 2023 with some elements able to book now. And actually, we don't stop there. There is more to come in the future as well, and how we are looking to help unify the whole shopper journey and make retail media simple for brands such as yourselves. As you would have seen in some of the media publications, Criteo is offering what we call Commerce Max, which is essentially moving our platform to an all-in-one DSP. Now, what this does is unifies the whole journey. So what we will look to do is help have everything under one roof and mean that you can target all the way from the top mass awareness parts of your activity right down to the core sales driving elements and measure everything within. And the way this works is essentially we are linking up the publisher websites that we integrate with, as well as the global media partners. So what this means is you can access both the premium inventory that we have, and then also the scaled brand safe open web supplies that we have in terms of our publishers. And it ends up all in one platform. So we have our R&P platform. This will all be a self-serve interface once we connect everything together, which means that you'll be able to run campaigns seamlessly by yourselves. And that means access to premium retailers, as well as on open web inventory. So the publishers that we work with targeting of highly valued audiences based on the first party data that we connect through our retailers. And then the most important part is having a closed loop reporting where you can measure everything from top to bottom and see how all of the different elements connect together. And the exciting part is that we have already started trials of this in America. So we have worked with Sony PlayStation and Best Buy to bring this to life. So as you can see, for one of their gaming products, we have supported offsite as well as on-site, and we're looking at how they all connect together. But this is something that's coming to EMEA in 2023. So hopefully towards the end of the year, we will look to have this in flight to essentially be a self-serve platform for yourselves as well. However, if we come back to today, one thing we wanted to do to help some of the brands understand kind of what they can and can't do with their current activity is consider what the best practices are and what to do once you are actually in a position to activate. So we've broken this into 3 parts. So firstly, we're going to look at the pre-campaign and what needs to be ticked essentially to have a more effective campaign. So the first thing will be around clear objectives. So I think it's important to make sure that campaigns objectives are aligned, so you know exactly what you're looking to achieve for this particular campaign, and also make sure that the SKUs you are supporting are the key focuses of what you want to do rather than necessarily target everything. It's also important to understand the robust SKUs that you have, and as Tony had mentioned previously in the slide, to make sure that stock availability is there so that you don't have campaigns that end or get paused halfway through. And then finally, looking at complementary above the line and trade plan to see if there are elements of what can be done there can be brought to life to help your retail media activity. And actually, if we focus on that particular part, what we want to do is bring brand and shopper together. So work less in silos and see how we can stack the efficiencies. Obviously, money is being spent on the brand side, and money is also being spent separately on the shopper side. So how can we piggyback each other to see where we can drive more efficiencies? And I guess the first part is understanding what the key objective is for that. So is awareness driving consideration of sales, or do you want sales to drive market share? And I think the important parts that we need to consider is definitely where we can align and leverage with brand support. So how can we piggyback off of television activity, or how can promotions in store help drive brand activity as well? So there is a benefit for both sides. The other part to consider is around leveraging promotions that you'll have with your retailers. So how can we support not only just always on, but spike around areas where we've got promotions? And then also look at focused product groups and which ones are requiring the most support or to be defended. As I said, try to ensure that you have a robust list of SKUs and actually focus on the ones that you need to prioritize rather than trying to spread across every single product. Some will be more valuable to others and will drive better results. And then the last part of this is aligning with your trade plan to make sure that you have a key and clear full year seasonal laydown, which means that when you are activating across the year, you have a clear plan of when and where to activate the most efficient parts of the year and actually spike to make sure that you have budgets allocated to those key areas. If we look at the middle part, the actual activation, Definitely one of the areas that we would look to, and I'll bring more into this later on, is around leaning on specialists. It's important that you look at expertise, and with some of your teams, you will have e-commerce specialists in-house, but for others that are looking to do more of a generalized role, it helps to lean on these specialists, and I'll show you the benefits of what you can get from that as well. It's also important from an activation point of view to see where is possible to have an always-on approach. With most of the products that run across FMCG, there tends to be a year-round purchase cycle for them, which means that it's always important to have that recency effect where you are top of mind constantly within the category. It takes something as simple as a competitor running a promotion at a more competitive price to upend the activity that you've done in the past and actually interrupt what you've done and manage to get those products in the basket, essentially. So actually having that top of mind awareness means that you will always be in that customer's mindset and are more likely to continue ongoing repeat sales. And then the main thing I think as well is also to have an on-the-go mindset. And what this essentially means is that not everything's going to be perfect when you first start activating. So I think just jumping in, having a go, understanding what works, what doesn't, and then tweaking as you go along across your journey in retail media to finalize and optimize exactly what your activations are like. So as I mentioned, I was going to touch on specialists a little bit more. So I think with retail media, this is something that needs looking after consistently. There's many variables that will impact kind of externally of what may change an activation from the beginning all the way to the end. So there could be a number of promotions, competitors that start activating, products that go out of stock, a number of different things with seasonality as well that involved. So I think gone are the days where you could set a campaign live in the past, you leave it, and then you would come to the end and see what the results were. And I think part of that is not necessarily a negative. It's part of the benefit of retail media that you can adapt as the campaign goes along and drive benefits and see where things are working and where they're not, and make changes as you go along. So the key thing I think, or the benefits that could help, is if you do have the opportunity to do this, I would suggest that you let third parties or agencies carry the brunt of the day-to-day jobs. And what that will mean is that they can optimize the activity, make sure that your CPCs are correct, you're competitive, etc. And then that leaves you time to focus on evaluating the activity and actually have a strategy for going forward of what that means in the future, rather than focusing too much of your time on just making sure that the campaign is running. It's also important to leverage agency expertise. This is their bread and butter. They're experts in e-commerce, they're experts in the market, and you can actually leverage this to your advantage. So there shouldn't be any more guesswork where you want to start your campaigns, how you want to activate this. You should be able to hand this over to them, and they will be able to run with it and optimize as you go along to make sure that you're getting the best results for it. And also agencies do have category knowledge. So if you do work with brands that are specialists in FMCG area, they will be able to understand how their activity with other categories have worked and where they can take learnings from that as a broader view of how e-commerce works. This is a lot more efficient and better than essentially the knowledge that you may have within your specific area. They can leverage benefits from other areas to your advantage. And then the final part is that there may be things like agency fees, but actually this shouldn't be seen necessarily as a negative. Like I said, the time saved from other areas of getting the activation running actually may be justified in the increased performance that you see. So they will be more on hand to optimize on a day-to-day basis, which means that they can hopefully drive better return on investment for you, which essentially should cover the costs of fees and beyond as well. And then the final part of this is optimizing. So when it comes to running activity and looking after it from the point it gets activated, it's important that you launch a QA and troubleshooting section early. This is to make sure that actually your products are running, your products are in stock, they are actually live, and your activity is running. There are a number of times where brands will set a campaign live, and then they might take a few weeks to look back at it only to realize that actually something didn't run, or it's been paused, or it just hasn't had a competitive enough CPC, which meant no activity is running. And then what I would do is focus on making sure that you schedule consistent reviews. As I mentioned from the previous slide, if you do have an agency on board, they will be able to handle this for you, and they will essentially be able to factor in kind of weekly or bi-weekly checks, and actually they can report back to you how the activity is going on an ongoing basis. It's also important to adapt your bidding strategy. There's no one size fits all, unfortunately, with retail media. So what may work for one category doesn't always work for another, as much as what may work with one of your own products may not work exactly the same on another range that you have as well. So it's important to make sure that you actually look at each product separately and adapt your bidding as you're going on. And then the last part is just making sure that when it comes to optimizing, you select the right optimization model based on the objectives you're looking to achieve. So at Criteo on our platform, we have 3 different optimization models that you can work with. So Click will look at focusing on products that drive the most clicks. So we're trying to achieve the most awareness for your brand. We also look at Conversion, which looks at volume of the products that you are looking to drive. So this is looking at trying to focus on products and optimizing to those that drive the most actual volume of sales rather than necessarily the return. And then we've got Revenue, which looks at predictively looking to drive as much ROAS as possible. This may seem beneficial from one point of view, but remember that just because the ROAS is high, this may be on a low base. So there is a fine balance between what you're looking to achieve between things like conversion and revenue models. For this particular section, I think I want to focus a little bit more on the bidding strategy and actually how this needs to be considered quite heavily. So like I've mentioned, your products, your audience, your categories are all different. So therefore you should treat your support, you shouldn't treat your support all in the same way as well. What may work for some may not necessarily work again in a different part. And actually it's around having a refined process every single time. So the important things to remember, I guess, from this point of view is, do all your SKUs need to be supported? Are there specific ones that you could focus on more than others? And actually, should you prioritize bids on those more than others? The other thing to keep in mind is, what is actually an acceptable CPC versus your product price? So would you bid £1 if your product is only generating a price of £1.20? You're probably not going to get much payback. So keep an eye on how much you're willing to bid versus what you're looking at return. Some of your products are in more competitive categories than others. So in some cases, you can look at bidding the floor price, but there are others where you're in a competitive category where you will look to have to increase that further. And that will impact the ROAS, but actually it will drive your awareness and actually look to hopefully drive more sales for the price that you pay. And it's also important to review the ROAS and bid accordingly. As I mentioned, not all of the products will have the same price point. So actually there are some bids that will require more spent on them and some that you can get away with less. And actually there is a fine balance between ROAS and actually getting visibility in front of shoppers. So now back to Tony to discuss some of the KPIs.
Thanks, Vince. Now, looking at KPIs, it's well and good to do all this activity, but what are you actually trying to measure, or what should you actually try to measure? So we would suggest a range of measurements, starting from the top, looking at your average share of page 1. How many products have you got there? Then you look at the percentage change of rank. If you were position 5 before and you've gone up to position 3, or you've gone down to position 10, what has happened here? Why has that happened? Then we look at the average share of the top 10 spots. So if you are in a category where you have more than one SKU in that category, how many of the top 10 spots can you get? We then look at keyword coverage. Do you come up when a consumer searches for toothpaste? Do you come up when they search for whitening toothpaste, for example, and the like? Then you also look at what is your average percentage share of the top 5 spots, because we know consumers rarely click on the second row and even more rarely on the third row. So the aim of this exercise is to be on the first row. And if you have the first 2 slots as sponsored search, you really only have 3 spots in the top 5 to rank for. And the last one is product coverage. Are all your products being seen? Are they in on the first page at least, and if on the first page, are they within the first 2 rows in order to be seen and clicked on and bought. Going on to the next slide, we would suggest that all of these measurements would tell you what your increase in positive sentiment is and what is the increase in share of voice. And you can measure all of these things by using external tools such as Essential Edge or Profitero, which help with this as well.